Hello and welcome once again everyone. Today's video features the brand new Tier VIII premium German battleship, Odin. The Odin is now in-game and live with the 0.9.5 update, in conjunction with the Hamburg dockyard event. By completing all the directives of the dockyard event, Odin can be unlocked for a minimum price of 3,500 doubloons. This video is about the Odin and not so much the event itself, so I won't spend too much time on it. But I must add before moving on, I love the whole idea of shipbuilding. It's available over the span of 2 updates, so very little time constraints, and what it boils down to is, for every stage of the directives you complete, you get a 5% discount on the final price of Odin. Play the game organically to get a very good ship for a good price, depending on how much you play, and despite everything you may have heard, Odin is a fun ship to play. As stated in the title, this Odin video is based on a secondary build, so let's start right there and look at the build before moving on to look at how I play the Odin and why I've chosen this particular build and the reasoning behind it. Using this secondary build is what I would regard as probably the most difficult way to play Odin, but I've got to admit it's a lot of fun. I'll be making a second video on the Odin with a full concealment build, which is also very effective and probably regarded as the safer and more easy way to play Odin. In Odin's case, I've noticed a lot of players so far have the tendency to look at Odin's stats and decide immediately if the ship is good or not, and not base their opinions on actual playing experience. Having played quite a few games now in Odin, I must say I'm very impressed. When adapting the right strategy to whatever build you might prefer, Odin is capable of not only performing very well, but being an incredibly fun ship to play. If you have the time and opportunity to play the Hamburg dockyard event, I advise you to go do it. Complete the event and you can pick up Odin as a real bargain. Why is Odin so good then, and why is it so much fun? Well, the foundation all starts with Odin's armour layout, which is very good indeed. Let's pull up a simple port screenshot of Odin to see she gets an upper bow and aft protection of 32mm. This can only be overmatched by either Yamato or Musashi. A strong icebreaker or lower bow armour of 60mm and a very strong lower aft section of 90mm. Odin's upper belt consists of 45mm, while its main citadel armour is made up of 320mm. with an additional angled layer of turtleback armour behind it. The superstructure is your standard Wehr at 16mm, but Odin's main deck is also well protected, with 50mm, which is very effective against plunging fire and most HE shells. Odin's turrets, however, have missed out on the armour bonanza, and do feel a little vulnerable at times, and one of the main reasons I recommend preventive maintenance with this build, to provide as much additional protection as possible. These turrets get a frontal plate of 360mm, a lower side and rear plate of 220mm, a sloped upper side plating of 150mm, and a top plate of 130. Despite this being a secondary build, I would really make a strong point of advising against using auxiliary armaments to keep your AA and secondary guns intact, and focus instead on main armaments mod 1, as when testing the former I finished quite a few games with both destroyed turrets and torpedo tubes. This is where we arrive at probably Odin's most contentious characteristic, her hit points. Coming in at 52,800, which when compared to the likes of Bismarck and Tirpitz at the same tier, which both have just under 70k, which at first glance may seem like a huge disadvantage. But where there is a will, there's a way. I've gone for the ship consumable mod in slot 5, instead of concealment, which adds 10% to the action time of all consumables. So squeezing that additional 10% out of 5 repair parties over the course of a game will go a long way to keeping Odin in the fight and giving as good as she gets. This will also increase the action time of the hydroacoustic search, which is not quite the all-powerful German hydro we see at Tier 9, but can still detect torpedoes at 3.5 kilometers and ships at 5 kilometers, which is still very helpful, because having a torpedo belt damage reduction of only 22%, Odin needs every little bit of help she can get to help avoid torpedoes. Angling and positioning yourself properly at all times will go a long way to utilizing Odin's strong armor, and the relatively low hit points will become less of an issue over time. Overextend or get focused, Odin will go down fast, just like any other ship. Even when top tier, one should be careful not to be too cavalier and simply charge forward, thinking all will bow down before Odin's wrath. If only things were so easy. It's probably one of the main reasons I chose these top tier games to include in these review commentaries, because the Odin faces its biggest tests when being bottom tier. It's how Odin performs in these games is a true indicator of the core strengths of this ship when played correctly. Odin gets 9 305mm guns in a 3x3 turret layout, with 2 fore and 1 aft, with a 180-degree turning time of 30 seconds, a max firing range of 19.1 kilometers, and a reload time of 23 seconds. While armor piercing should be your weapon of choice, Odin's HE is more than competent, capable of a max damage of 3600, a base fire chance of 27%, boosted to 29% with both signal flags, and capable of penetrating 76mm of armor, more than enough to pen even the most armored deck of top tier battleships. Odin's armor piercing can inflict a max damage of 9400 and is very good at dealing with cruisers at virtually all ranges, while being most effective against enemy battleships at medium to close range. Despite being set up with the secondary battery modification in slot 3, the max dispersion of 251 meters is more than manageable, and both of these shell types have the exact same shell speed of 865 meters per second. Odin's secondary armament, boosted with these skills and modifications, and not forgetting to mount the Mike Yankee signal flag, now have a max firing range of 11.6 kilometers and come in 2 different calibers: 12 128mm guns with a reload speed of 3.2 seconds, with a max damage of 1500, and 6 150mm guns that have a max damage of 1700 and a slightly slower reload of 6.6 seconds. They both have good shell speeds of 900 and 960 meters per second, respectively, and I've found them to be generally quite reliable. So instead of boosting their accuracy with manual fire control, it's freed up skill points for additional tanking capabilities. Being able to conserve one's HP for late game, close range engagements will generally give you more time to bring these secondaries to bear, making them even more effective, and it's usually great fun to see your enemy suffer under a constant barrage of secondary hits, not only inflicting bonus damage, but also adding increased pressure by being able to set those fires. Being able to boost the secondary range with advanced firing training has the added bonus of increasing the damage from Odin's flak explosions, and with the high number of CVs at this tier, having some more AA defense is usually for the better. Odin has 60 AA guns in total, from 20mm up to 128mm, and gets an AA defense rating of 77, with a max firing range of 6 kilometers, a continuous average damage of 258, and 5 flak explosions per salvo, capable of inflicting a max damage of 1690. Odin also has the capability of mounting the fighter consumable should you find yourself constantly queuing up with carriers, or playing divisions with them. When it comes to manoeuvrability, I found the Odin to be generally quite responsive, with a top base speed of 30 knots, boosted to 31.5 knots with the Sierra Mike signal flag, a turning circle of 790 meters, and a rudder shift time of 14.1 seconds. Not terrible, considering once again I've chosen the additional tanking capabilities provided by Damage Control Systems Mod 2 instead of steering gears. This build is designed with the mindset of tanking damage when necessary, but using island cover as much as possible, not just to close the distance, but to isolate enemies and deny others lines of fire and torping angles. So concealment becomes less important, so you should avoid being out in the open too much, or on exposed flanks. Odin with this build has a concealment rating of 37, meaning you will be detected at 14.8 kilometers, so not exactly stealthy. Once you manage to close that distance, Odin has one final ace up its sleeve, in the form of torpedoes, with 2 X4 launchers, one on each side, capable of a max damage of 13,700, a max firing range of 6 kilometers, and a reload time of 90 seconds. These launchers do have good firing angles, but are located at the rear, so it's important to learn early on to not to try and fire them too early, and get greedy, unlike me of course, as you have to expose too much broadside to fire them at targets in front of you. Again, unlike me, bide your time, maintain your angling, and these torpedoes will serve you well in close quarter fights like this. In my next video I will again showcase the Odin, but with a concealment build, and the required variations in tactics and positioning. But it's a very fun ship to play and quite versatile, and 2700 base XP in a tier 10 game, not too bad at all. I'd like to thank you once again all for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more. Take a moment to check out some of my most recent videos and leave a comment below. And until the next time, keep sailing it like you stole it.